This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day. Carefully crafted for you by humans, so meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fully Managed podcast where we discuss marketing and business tips to help assist you on your business journey. I'm your host, Shannon, Penji's partnership coordinator, and I'm joined here today with a very special guest, Dave Carberry from Enradius and also needworking.com. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me today, Shannon. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So first I want you to introduce yourself how you would, because sometimes it's different than how I would. And then we'll get right into a fun little game to start our creative juices, get them flowing, everything like that.
Okay. So Dave Carberry, my company is Enradius, as you had mentioned. I started the company about 10 years ago. We are a geo-targeting specialist. So we don't do creatives. We're not a creative agency. We work with agencies and consultants, and we actually help them really on the demographics that they want to target, the audiences they're looking at. We've got products that we call Map Your Marketing, so you can map out. And we've got a really cool partnership with Placer AI. So we're going in and doing huge studies on location-based advertising. So that's kind of what Enradius does. And then Needworking, just to kind of throw that in there. I wrote a book called Stop Networking, Start Needworking, and it's based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So a lot of the times when you're doing social media, it's like, look at me, follow me. And, people really aren't asking and connecting one-to-one with a person on how they need and what they want to do. So, as kind of aside from Enradius, I saw what was happening in social media, and I was like, people have needs everywhere. So let's kind of see what I can do on that side. So created a little platform and wrote the book. So a little bit about me.
That is incredible, and I will definitely be asking you more about that because it intrigues me to no end. I am very excited. I love hearing about new things on the podcast and learning about them, so I'm definitely going to ask you about that. But first, we're going to do a game. So it's more of a segment rather than a game, I suppose. But so what I want you to do is roast your industry. So what this entails is that I just want you to go on a little rant about anything that you think needs improvement in the agency world, or maybe just your more niche. So maybe your specific world of marketing. So it could be that as well, but anything that, frustrates you on the day-to-day that you would love to just get out.
Well, as a person that does need working and who wants to do beneficial things and working together with people, I kind of don't see the adversarial kind of thing with frustration, but things that I've noticed in the industry side. So being incorporated in Maryland, actually I'm down in Virginia today, but our company is based in Maryland. Maryland came out with this taxation on products. So you've got, some of the upper level products for ad serving that now they're taxing you on those pieces. And supposedly like that 6% tax gets kicked back to small businesses like ourselves. And a lot of the times we're not charging the clients on that. We aren't charging the clients on that, but it gets kicked in. And the legislators on that side have no understanding that it actually just hurts small businesses. So that's one factor. And then another factor is the term geotargeting, geofencing, geomarketing. There's so many geos out there in this space for advertising. That's another frustrating piece because you've got people that are out there slinging it and using it as a term that's like, oh yeah, this is how we do it. Like Google does geofencing, where it's really not as specialized and target as taking and making it a point of interest where you can actually encase like a building, for example, or an event space or a stadium. So that term gets thrown out there so loosely when you can really get a lot granular with what you're doing with it. So that's a couple of different things. So taxes and geofencing. about?
Yeah, I can resonate with both of those things. I think that there's common it's very often where legislation is created that affects small businesses negatively when it's sometimes it's even in the hopes of doing the exact opposite, but they don't understand the industry enough when creating the legislation to really affect it positively. And it's very funny that we run into it very, very often. I in college I studied political science and I learned about a lot of the um excuse my French ass backwards way of people doing legislation sometimes where they don't do enough research and they do things in hopes of doing something positive and it ends up having a completely opposite effect. So I can definitely understand the taxes form because I'm sure maybe it was intended for larger businesses, which maybe they can take that kick, but it affected everyone.
Right. It was intended for the Facebooks and the Googles of the
Mhm.
world, the Netflix, any kind of online types of stream things that you do. But then it gets pushed back down to, the little guy. And I think that was the other thing too. Like during the time frame, it was right after COVID. And
Thank
we were
God.
all just getting back on steady ground and really kind of growing the businesses, but they were attacking the larger guys. And so they didn't realize that it was going to affect us. And then like all of a sudden business started declining like the last couple of years just in the advertising industry. And as you know, one of the first thing that gets cut is media. And so now you got to pay more taxes, inflation goes up, and then, ad spend's down. So there's a lot of smaller businesses for the industry that got hurt, and a lot of people that got laid off too in the advertising industry. So if you think about how that impacted it, and now you've got legislation that's happening, and everybody's frustrated that there's cuts on the federal side of it. Well, we've been dealing with those cuts for the last 4 years. It's been a struggle. It hasn't been the easiest thing. So yeah.
The government is something to be frustrated with. I'm all for that at all times, but especially when it affects small businesses, that's what we want to uplift and keep. But you
Well,
know,
absolutely. And that's where, the creative juices keep coming. And, things like what you guys do are just really amazing because that's what small business needs. They just need that power, the energy, the boost, and the brand. So
yeah, and they need sometimes they do need help with things that are lower cost solely because they can't afford to go with the big guys sometimes. And I think that is something that's really helpful. I do and I think that it's very difficult to provide your services at a lower cost if you're being taxed. Um
yeah, agreed. Agreed.
Well, going on to your other point, so Enradia specializes in geo-targeting advertising. Can you talk about since you have frustration with different terms being thrown out there, which I think is a common problem in agency work, terms being used in places that they don't need or are not necessary to be in. One, can you define that more clearly so that I guess maybe that'll improve people's interpretations of these terms. And then also, actually, I'll ask my follow-up question once you do that.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So if you think about Facebook
Mhm,
and what kind of rate and think of our name in radius. I mean,
mhm,
I thought of the name years ago and I was like, yeah, eventually. And I came up with the name in 2011. And this was before we did really any hyper targeting. And I kind of saw where the industry was going because I used to work in radio, I used to work in television, and it was more of a mass media where if you run a television ad, you are broadcasting your message for like one location, but yet everybody else gets it in multiple counties.
mhm,
So I'm like, eventually we're going to be able to parse this stuff down to get really granular. So when you look at a product like Facebook or Google, their fences are about a half a mile. So that's really not that targeted and specific. And some of the things that we can do it in radius is number one, we look at mobile data that's out there in the marketplace where people have been with. We don't know who those people are, but we know that those devices have actually been at a stadium or an event. And so we can track back on people that were there previously. And if you can tell that they're sports fans, then you build a sports audience. So that's one way to do a target. And it's not necessarily all offense, but it's geo related. It's geo and where they are and what they're doing at that time. The other thing too is just looking at like we do a lot of tourism events. So restaurant weeks, we can go in and we can geofence and actually put a box around, so to speak, a restaurant and somebody that's been in that restaurant. So let's say a county is doing the restaurant week. They want to bring in anybody that was in those 50 restaurants that are participating from the last, let's say 60 days, or even longer. We can hit those devices. So they're just some different kind of tactics, and that's a geo cookie. So it's not really a geofence, so to speak. It's really more of a cookie and then following around that device and what they did. So there's a couple unique flavors that we do and we build out with clients, and it's not cookie cutter where you're just putting a circle around something. You can do it by zips, you can do it by zones, you can do it by audience behaviors and different things. So it's more tactical. We call it geo-tactical. So there's another geo term.
There's a geo cookie. I think that's my favorite I've heard so far. I think you should use that more often.
I like it.
Geo cookie's good. Sounds fun.
Yeah. And we call it the geo journey because
another one.
Instead of fencing, we're going to do a geo journey. You have a different journey than everybody else. And what's neat, like with some of the products and like I said, we're a partner with Placer. We actually can go in and look and see what hotels they might have been staying at before that journey. So
speaking of like all this information that you kind of find out about someone when doing this process, how do you balance like consumer privacy with this geo-targeting that you do?
We don't collect any data for our clients. So it's up to them to set it up on their website. So when you build the website up and you put the form in, as long as somebody's coming in and putting the form in, that's first party data that you would own as a client, and we don't touch any of that. So we're utilizing other services that have the data, but we personally don't collect anything.
Okay. So
yeah, and with that too, I mean, you see what's happening over in Europe and California and some of these other standards that are happening. For example, the privacy piece of it has really hit hard with health organizations and schools. So now a lot of the partners we work with are not targeting like K through 12 schools any longer, where before you could put a fence around the schools. So, and same thing with health and hospitals. So legislation, and which is good. I think, the legislators are understanding the importance of technology and targeting. So they have gone in and they've done that in certain regions. I think New York City, as a matter of fact, is one of them that has a big, geo like non-targeting thing. So a lot of the times you can't geofence what you want in certain areas based off of some of the rules and the regs.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. I actually did talk to someone the other day who works in the healthcare industry that there's, your websites have to be HIPAA compliant and all these different elements. And so I think that being able to incorporate this specific type of geo-targeting in that may not be like the most, and maybe people won't be very happy about that. I think that's okay. I understand there being legislation around that. I can understand it could maybe be frustrating for a marketer that has that as a strategy, but there's definitely, I'm sure, ways around it in which you can target something that's familiar in or like adjacent to that specific area. Does that make sense? Is there like...
It does. Yeah. So instead of, let's say for the early school learning, maybe you target like a YMCA or you target like a gymboree or something that's not really school related, that's protected. Then the protection of military bases. We've got a client that also has a location that's on a military base. So we can't even promote like to go to that military base for it because it's an internal thing. And the military bases are siloed off from that fencing too.
That's really interesting. So is there, so do you have to learn the legality of different industries in order to go through this, or do you kind of learn it throughout the process of being like, oh, I can't do this here?
It's a process, because rules and regs are changing on the regular. So, it's when we started doing, I've been doing digital marketing for the last 20 years. So when we started doing it, like it was kind of a free for all. When I worked at AOL and ad.com, you could pretty much do whatever you wanted until all of a sudden it's like, all right, you can't do that anymore. And, the Can Spam Act law came out and some of the other variables against what you can do. And it's a tighter clamp, I think. And I do think it's needed because it was anything goes back in the day. So it's interesting. And now that Google had talked about getting rid of third-party cookies also, which they haven't done yet, but I mean it's kind of been on the works, that adds to other learning. So they're going to go to a topics-based format instead of looking at that third party. So it's more about taking audiences and lumping them into a topics level. And we built Needworking, the platform, based on that, knowing that, you know what, we are not all the same, and we are kind of lumped into our habits and behaviors of what we do or what we like. So there's a way to actually communicate and do that, where instead of just a free for all on a large scale, you kind of just put people in, I want to say buckets, but that's really what it is. It's here's this type of person, here's this type of person, and that type of person. So topic based, I think, is kind of an interesting format and play that Google's coming out with. When that gets accomplished, it's a heavy push for changing the dynamics of what you're doing with marketing and advertising. But I think it'll be interesting shift on the marketplace in general.
Yeah, Google makes a lot of decisions that affects the marketing industry rapidly. I do notice that, especially with the incorporation of AI, many people have a lot to say about that. So that switch will be a very interesting one to discuss in the future. I always do wonder how, sometimes positively, because sometimes things are easier to learn when Google changes something, but sometimes it's not. So I just love to hear about the repercussions of Google's decisions.
Yeah. Well, and AI, and as you have seen, AI is just rapidly changing everything. Like it's now in Canva and it's now in ChatGPT. And so you go to ChatGPT and say, design me an image, and there's an image. Albeit it's kind of messy and things aren't spelled correctly.
It's not there.
Oh, I mean, who knows where that's going to go? But yeah, you still need people to actually do things. So,
well, you mentioned Google switching to third-party data, but you guys emphasize the importance of first-party data in marketing. So is that, when you emphasize that, is that you advising clients to collect and utilize that data, or are you incorporating that into their campaigns and just explaining that process to them?
It's interesting because I had a client reach out to us a couple weeks ago because they wanted to do a text-based and SMS campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, how much data do you have? Like, how many phone numbers? They're like, none. And I'm like, well, you can't really do that for you if you haven't collected it. And that's, the drawback. We're not going to just go out and spam people and not, if we don't know who they are, because we're just not that type of company. But what we will do is tell clients, hey, collect the data. You utilize your first party data. So you can do a match back campaign on email addresses that you might have. And then that way you can utilize all the DSPs that are out there serving ads that might also have that. So and Facebook does it too, is where you can actually upload and look for that type of first party data, which, a lookalike, almost like a lookalike audience. So
you do advise them to collect that data for themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. And every business should. If you think about a QR code, when you put a QR code on an ad, that's first party data. And are you retargeting off of anybody that's come to your website? And there are ways to see where they're coming from within the website, just looking at just we have it tied into one of the CRM systems internally, and we can see who's visited our site from what company. We don't know who it is, but then they tie it into LinkedIn or Seamless or some of the other AI situations. And they're like, it could have been these multiple people that could have come to your site. So it's a sort of a guessing game on that load, but it's like, all right, how much time did they spend on your site? What did they do? And are they coming back, to see and do visits back? So there's a lot of good trackable data that's out there that you can figure out who is coming to your site, and with the ads that you've actually hit and the targeting that you've done.
Do you think that, I like that you mentioned QR codes, because I actually did have a question about that as well. Do you recommend this as a good strategy for geo-targeting specifically? Do you think that this is something that's increasingly helpful since it's something that's more popular nowadays?
On printed pieces, yes.
Mm-hmm.
For digital, most digital ads are on your phone, so you can't really scan your phone
Yeah.
ad when you're on an ad. So it's kind of
Maybe
a
they'll
catch 20.
incorporate that in the next update.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I click it. But one of the things I think it's important too, because we're working with a client that we're actually breaking out desktop ads versus mobile ads. And so the desktop ads, why not put a QR code on it? If
Yeah.
somebody's like running and it's like, all right, I want to hit this one, you might be able to capture it. I mean, it's in some of it's video. So the other piece of it too on a desktop, now that you've got connected TVs and people are watching and streaming things, if you're running an ad that might go through Hulu or Spotify and you want to put it on there, people might not want to interrupt what they're watching and stop it. So, there's QR codes there. The frequency of scanning it probably lasts, but you don't know. So it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And if they're on their phone or if they're with a group of people watching too, like Super Bowl, Super Bowl runs how many QR codes to it and doing it during it. And so of that, it makes sense to run a QR code because you've got big events occurring.
Yeah.
And you're not going to switch, and people are looking at it on their own device in their own personal way in a group setting.
I do think it's very interesting that it's being incorporated more in advertisements that I've never seen before. For example, I think recently when I pause, I don't remember what service it is specifically, but when I pause my show, there's a blanket ad there, which was not a thing before. It would just pause on the screen of the clip of the show that you paused on. But having a QR code there, I think is really smart because it's something that the screen is paused so you know that you're not going to miss it if it's something that you want to utilize. But it's also something that can be helpful in this tactic that you're talking about.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, and it is funny because the silence, and I know exactly what you're talking about, where there's like just a blank of no audio and there's an ad that's like a
Yes.
still ad with a QR code. But the silence stops you, take a look and glance over, like, why isn't there someone talking? Like, when you see, when you hear Patrick Mahomes in a State Farm commercial, you're like, yeah, I've seen it a million times. And am I really going to pay attention to it? No. And so now it's like, all right, now what is that on there? Why is it there? And then you pay more attention and then all of a sudden you grab it. Yeah. I mean, it does make sense to do it that way.
It's like a more effective billboard because you're not in motion. Like,
yeah.
I do think it's a very smart tactic, and it is jarring to have a silent ad on a television. I think that when maybe people will get used to it, and maybe it won't be as innovative, I suppose. But as of now, yes, I did pay attention to them because I was shocked and almost annoyed that they were advertising in this way, because normally I'm used to my paused screen and then it's an ad 5 seconds later. Like, okay, they're just thinking of new ways to put ads up now.
Yep. Oh, definitely. Yeah, they want to get your attention any way they can. Because think about how many times you're getting impacted by an ad every day. Driving to work, pumping gas. It's on the gas tops now too. So yeah, I mean, there's well, and that's what we do with the geo side of it. So we're finding where people, like, as I mentioned, the geo journey, if their journey is driving past and stopping at a certain gas station on their way to work or wherever they're doing their entertainment, like, you just want to kind of put that frequency in front of them. So it's not just on their phone, it's at places where it's along the way on that journey.
Yeah, that's genius to utilize a gas station that's on the journey of the person going to the business in which you're referring to, or nearby. I didn't even think about something like that. That's very I can see how fruitful geo-targeting can be in trying to because people are always concerned about the buyer's journey, but this is like a physical journey, not just a mental journey.
Yeah, not just the statistics in the back end of the site. It's just where are they going and what you don't see. The other interesting piece too is just retail television and retail ad media spend that's happening too. So for example, you look at Amazon or Whole Foods, let's say, they're starting to put more and more devices in the retail stores and locations like 7-Elevens. And now they're adding to that mix of just the different things that you're seeing. So Simon Malls, for example, when you walk through a mall, you see some of these ad placements. You can buy into those. They'll allow you to buy ads in the malls and on that journey. And more with more locations, you're seeing the products actually getting closer to people instead of it just being a shelf talker when you're in a grocery store. Now it's like, oh, here, save $10 up on the video screen. And it's kind of out there now. So it's part of what we do. And we're so used to video that it's just, we're going to see more and more mentions and media like that coming that way.
I love to see it because new ways of marketing something intrigues me, but it also disappoints me because I'm upset that they're utilizing more and more spaces for advertising.
Oh, it's definitely
like a double-edged sword of like, this is exciting because it's so innovative and people are constantly thinking of new ways of doing something, which is so cool, especially if you're interested in the marketing space. But then I think there's always that little thing in the back of my mind that's like, oh, this is everywhere now. We're getting closer to the movie Idiocracy.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I know I love to watch ads and listen to ads because that's just what I've done all my life. And everybody else turns them off and I turn them back on and they're like, whoa, what are you doing? Why?
Mhm.
Why do you want to?
We don't want to hear. Yeah, people will skip them. Sometimes I'll just watch them because I'm like, I can learn something from this.
Right. Absolutely.
So for our last part of this podcast, I really want to know more about need working because I haven't asked you about it yet, and I think it's very, very interesting. Okay, so one, give me more an in-depth synopsis on what it is, how you incorporate Maslow's hierarchy of needs into it, because I think that's really, really cool. I know that you might want people to get the book, so you don't have to go too far into depth, but I'd love to learn about it more because it's very, very cool to me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking. Yes, I would love for people to buy the book. It's on Amazon. You can find it if you just Google Stop Networking, Start Need Working. But I was looking to get investors, and as you do that, they ask you to write like a little 5-page deck about, hey, what is this product? What is the idea? And I couldn't stop at 5 pages. So I ended up going into this whole, big thing about what it really is. And to me, it is people getting together and wanting that have a need and they don't know how to ask others. Years ago when different generations are growing up, they've got these tighter knit areas of people who they talk to. And you can ask a question. But now we've got so much media that's just look at me, as I'd mentioned. And it's tough. Like you don't get that connection. And so it's saying, hey, look, I need this. Can you help me? And it's a point where you don't want to be too needy with someone. It's a reciprocity. So the way I look at it, I always tell people, and this is for a networking side of it, you got to get your networking up in gear. And the acronym is groups. Join a good group, go to an event that you really like and tie into with the topic that you're related to, build allies. So build a close knit friends. And then also reciprocity, give back. Don't just take, you want to do that. So that's really kind of the philosophy of need working is how you network and what you're doing in those groups and asking for help. And I don't know if you've heard of Robin Dunbar. He's a sociologist. He's written a couple books. He's over in England, but it's called Dunbar's Number. And basically, you've got 70,000 followers, 100,000 followers, or all this craziness of numbers, but you really can't handle that many people that you're close to. So, you've got somebody that is your best friend, your parents, your family, somebody will take a bullet for you. It's like your inner circle, and then your circles go out from there. So need working is really kind of a combination of Dunbar's number and Maslow's hierarchy of needs and baked in. So I think it really is a representation of, sometimes we forget with all the social media that's happening, just like you go into Facebook, and one of the reasons I did create this was in my head, I had built out the idea of it. My dad had passed away from COVID, and it was a brutal time in 2020. And, it's a time when we all should have been coming together on social media, but people were just angry with one another. It was from the Freddie Gray stuff to everything else that had been out there. It was a brutal time, and it was just yelling. And social media is not a place to really put your anger out and negativity. And I felt that I wanted to kind of change the paradigm a little bit and not be so negative, because there are people that need our voices. They need our expertise. They need insight. They want people to guide. So I think you're seeing some of that shift happening. So I built it to have insights, and we have this fun thing on the website. It's called a hot potato. So if I don't know the answer to it, I hot potato it to somebody else.
Huh.
And so, yeah, so we tried to make it fun and really create the whole area around it. And I just launched a podcast recently too, myself. It's called The Mountain. And it's all about how we get up and climb the mountain together. And I know this is a long story, see, that's why I couldn't put it in 5 slides.
No.
But in chapter 2, I call it, it's the climb. And it's like, you can't necessarily always get up the mountain by yourself. And you need somebody to help you. You need a Sherpa, you need a guide. And so need working is really about finding that person that you can connect with that will listen to you and help you, whether it's a mastermind group or anything else that might matter. But it just, there's ways to connect differently. And it's really more of a philosophy than anything else.
Oh, I really love that. I really do appreciate, especially in the agency world where people are actually providing value to people and not just doing it in the hopes. I mean, like, everyone wants customers, everyone wants clients. Everyone knows that. Like, that everyone knows that that's the point, I guess, of everything. But to be able to provide value without asking for anything in return at that point is really lovely. But being realistic that everyone does need something, and needs help doing that thing is really great, because I think agency work, and I this constantly comes up, but I think in the beginning, people were super secretive about everything that they were doing, and it wasn't like a big thing. People love to complain, but no one would really talk about their strategies for things and how they can help others. And I think I'm definitely seeing a switch now, which I think you touched on as well, is that it's getting a little better. And I love to see that, but I love hearing about specific tools like Needworking that are created surrounding that exact concept of helping each other, but also being realistic that everyone has needs that, they need. I guess that's still fostering help.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? We all have a value, and sometimes we don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, when you put your expertise out there, it's good to get paid for it too. So you
Yeah.
definitely want to make sure that you ask, hey, I have a need to make money and feed my family. So if I provide the service to you, definitely you're going to do that. So it's not always giving for free. It's,
Yeah.
it's that reciprocal and what that value is and what it works. So
Yeah, I love it. I appreciate the realism with it as well, because it's not just you can provide value for people, but if it's at a detriment to you, it's not providing value for you, which is kind of the point of putting yourself out there too.
yeah, and the way it's termed, at least on the site too, is when you throw a need out there, you don't know who will necessarily answer it, because it's not always people that you're connected to. So a really cool story is a friend of mine, his father had passed away, and their tradition every year was to go to an Orioles game to opening day. And his father wasn't around, and he was just going to give up on the tradition. But then, like, it became later and later last year, and he's like, you know what? I want to keep that going with my son. So he put a need out on Needworking to see if anybody had opening day Oriole tickets, because they were sold out, to go to the game. And the Orioles actually reached out to them and gave him a pair of tickets for him and his son, because he put his story out there. And I thought it was just really cool.
That's so sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Oh,
really awesome. So
well, I love to hear about that, and I'm hoping that the audience will also love to hear and get incorporated with that as well, because I think that I don't know, I love to hear wholesome things in this industry specifically. I think that is incredibly wholesome, and helpful for everyone. And I love to hear more tools that are put out like that, because we should be more connected in a way that's actually helpful to everyone.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for explaining that. We are a little over time, but I think that means it was just a very good conversation. So I'm happy. And I learned a lot. So I really appreciate you talking with me today, especially everything that you're doing with need working and geo-targeting, more new topics that I get to learn about. So that's very exciting for me. So I appreciate you giving all your insights.
No, thank you for having me. It was great chatting today too.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching or listening. Please do not forget to like and subscribe, check out other episodes like this so you get to learn from every podcast like I get to. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest, and to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.